Stop.
C'est trop drôle.
Can you introduce yourself?
Yes, I am Laura, I'm French. I was a student in the business school of Caen, and previous that I did a first degree in law, and I am working now in Paris as project management in business and legal forum.
Can you talk about your previous experiences abroad?
Yes, I did my third year of law school in Ireland, in Belfast. Then I did my second semester of business school in the US, in Waco, Texas. And after this semester abroad, I did my internship for the same school in Iceland, Reykjavik.
Did you travel in the US and Iceland during your stay?
Yes, during my stay in the US, I traveled in Texas, like a little bit. I did a little bit of traveling there. And for spring break, we went to New Orleans and we traveled all the way to Louisiana, the south of Louisiana. And when I was in Iceland, since it's a small country, I did the tour of the country following the Ring Road, which is like following the coast to the island.
Did you travel all by yourself?
No, in the US I did the spring break with my friends that I met over there, so that was really nice. And in Iceland I did a lot of traveling on by myself. Actually, I did a few weekend trips with the crew at work, but I did some alone. Yeah.
We're going to talk some bit about the US. What is interesting about going there?
It's interesting for French people, really everyone outside the US, to I think confront what they expect from the US and what they see in like TV show and movies, and to like what the real life over there is, what the student life is like, what's different from what you thought, and what's represented in like common culture and what is really is. I think that's interesting.
What about the local climate? Did you find it different compared to France?
Yes, very different. I think France and Europe in general is more like gloomy than the US. They are really a culture and like people really enthusiastic, like really optimistic, and we find that very different than Europe, where we are in general more pessimistic and maybe a bit more, I don't know, like not as like excited about everything like they are. They really are like this. It's a cliche, but this one I find it's true.
So you said you were studying in the US.
Yes.
How are exams and classes different from your regular studying habits in France?
It's very, very different. I think it's more like US is comparable to what they have in the UK and Ireland. It's like, it's a system of grades that's by percent. So in France we have like a mark out of 20 or 10 usually. In the US it would be out of 100%, so you would have some grades, and they rate like really high compared to what we would have. Like for example, I think in the university in France, if you have a 15, that's a really good grade and we're really happy. But if you convert that in the US, that's average. That's not good at all. In the US it's possible to have 100%. If your teacher thinks that you did perfect, he would give you 100. So I think the rate on how we are graded is very different. Like I think it may be linked to because they believe that you can really do perfect, and they're more like maybe this optimistic culture than we are, and while our teacher really wants to keep a distance with us, so they would really grade us lower. So this is different, and this is sometimes weird to have this kind of grades for us French. What's different also is that it's really, I mean, it depends of of your field, but in business school at least you have less dissertation and essay. It's more like quiz, so multiple choice questions, and it's just that. Like you don't really have to write or to compose something. It's just like you enter on the computer in the class and then you're done with your exam. So that.
Did you find it easy?
I found it easier, but it's because I had the choice of my subjects. Like I know that for them they have some subjects I have to choose, like accounting or anything. I didn't have to have that. So honestly, I took the easy one and I found it easier. So maybe that had an impact also.
You had some other local metric systems to get used to.
Yes.
Like Celsius to Fahrenheit, centimeters to inches, pounds, etc. How was it getting used to that?
I never get used to that. I never did. No. I didn't stay long enough. Actually, I think 6 months is really too short. Maybe a bit more to Fahrenheit, because that's the one you use the most of the time, like, you know, what's the weather, you just check, and this one it was okay, the rest I don't know.
It sounded very complex.
Yeah, kind of, but it's just like at some point you see the same temperature and you kind of like know what's the comparable in Celsius without doing all the math.
How are you treated as an international student in the US?
Very good. Honestly, I think the US the US university knows their potential, so they know they can attract a lot of international students and they treat them very, very good. Like when we arrived, we had local ambassadors, they're called, that are students volunteering for Baylor, that are taking care of the international students, and just like they become your friends, you know, so you have a group of friends without even having to go outside or anything. So that's really, you're very well welcomed. And then when you meet the local and you say you're French or you said you're international, they are super welcoming. So you will have a lot of events you're invited to. It's really easy when you're international.
Did you find that the university system was easy to get used to? It was welcoming as for international students?
Yes. I really thought that it was very welcoming. They're really open to new culture. But once again, it's like you have this group of ambassadors and like other teachers and students that are international, and sometimes the only problem is that they don't really mix up with the local Texans that are there. You mix up more with the transfer students that come from other states or the international one, and not so much with the real Texan. Like I met some Texan friends that were in my class that told me that I was the first like international students they met, and they've been there for 3 years. So I think they're like two really separate groups, maybe.
Would you have liked to meet more local people?
Yes, I would have loved that, but I think I had the chance because in the classes we met a few, and I had a friend who met a friend of the Frat guys, and we've been to some Frat parties, and there are only Texan people over there.
What about Frat groups? It's not something we're used to as French people.
Yeah, it's not at all what we're used to, and it's really, on some levels, it's really like the movies. Like they do this huge party in a house. It's really like house party. You get booze outside. You get like beer pong and everything. It's really fun. And in some other levels, it's actually way more, I'd say, or maybe it was just Baylor, but more quiet. It's not like wild, or they are not like just idiots playing baseball or basketball. No, they are actually really decent people, I think.
So overall, would you say it's easy to meet other people when you're studying in the US?
I would say it's easy to meet new people, yes, but to really become close to them, that's kind of the problem with the American though, because it's really easy to start a conversation and chat, easier than in France, I would say. But you know, sometimes you chat with someone for a long time and then it just like, you don't make real connection. Like it's harder to make friends, I'd say. You can make acquaintances, but friends, it's harder.
Did you keep in touch with your relatives and friends?
Yes. I was trying to call my parents at least once a week by Skype or or on the phone, even for less like 10 minutes, you know. And by Messenger, it's more easier because you don't have you have the time difference, of course, but you know, you send a message, I just got it one day, wake up, it's okay.
Was it easy to organize your time to talk with them?
Not always. I remember that sometimes I had my mom on the phone when it was 2 a.m. or something like that, but it's okay.
What about dealing with budget and the prices in the US?
Well, it's prices in Waco at least are not so bad, and I have to admit that on the budget I didn't really had any worry to do, because my student plan was I paid a certain amount of money before I leave, and it was for my accommodation, and I also had a meal plan. So it means that on my student card I had 10 meals on a week, and I could just go to the cafeteria or any dining hall and just go eat there. So I didn't have to worry about making groceries or anything.
But do all international students have to pay a tuition fee?
Oh, it wasn't tuition fees, it was just accommodation and meal. We didn't pay a tuition fee, no. I paid the tuition fee of my school in France, and I didn't pay anything to Baylor. Some international students do have to pay, because I was an exchange. If you are an international student really enrolled in the uni in the Baylor, yes, you have to pay the tuition fees.
So outside of school, was it difficult to organize your budget?
Not really, no, because going out, at least in Texas, it's not, I didn't find it expensive, honestly, because we used to, during the week we were going out in Waco, so it's a small town, so honestly, like bars and nightclubs are pretty cheap over there. And during the weekend, we were going sometime to Austin, just in big city in Texas, and it's still affordable, I found. It's really okay. So Texas is not expensive at all as a state, I would say.
What about administrative requirements?
That's a complicated one.
How did you get a visa?
So we knew that we were living in I said we because I left with another guy in my class, and we knew that we left the US like end of August, I would say. So they already my uni sent something to Baylor. And then we had an email, I know like it was probably in September, and we didn't do anything about it. And in October we received a urgent call out for administrative requirement, and it was actually the school representative of Baylor that is taking care of international students and all the administrative requirement for them, visa and etc. She sent us something saying, did you start any of the formalities? And we didn't start anything. And so when you go to the US via an exchange program with uni is sending something to your sponsor in the US, which is the other university, and then send you a form. And you need this form to then fill. You have appliance for on the website of the American government. It's really long. You have to have all the paper. You have to have an ID picture. You have to have your records. You have to all your administrative background needs to be there. So it takes a long time, and then you have to take an appointment in the embassy in Paris, and I think there's one in Bordeaux also, but in Paris you have to have the appointment, go there, they validate, and then you get your visa, and with your passport, of course.
Wow.
So that's really long, and we didn't prepare good at all.
How long did it take you?
So I think we started really worried about it in mid-October. We had no, maybe a bit before, beginning of October. We had the meeting in the embassy end of October, beginning of November, and then I had the visa in December, something like that. So you have to take at least 3 months if you want to be not a rush like we were and totally unprepared. It's better to take 3 months. Yeah.
What about healthcare?
So for healthcare, I would say that if you're not in the US for a long time, take a French one. Take a French one that is covering more than the social security, and that is covering to the real expenses that you're gonna have. It's they have a lot of program. Mine was a PAC Monde, so it covers for the US. You have to make sure it covers for the US because they know it's more expensive. So you pay a bit more, but honestly, I wouldn't want to be in the US and have to pay the hospital fees all by myself.
What are some stereotypes about studying in the US?
What are stereotypes? I don't know, I think if you mean by studying being in the uni, I would say frat parties and stuff like that, living on a campus, which is true actually. You do live in the campus, there's everything you need. You go to class some days a day, but some hours a day, but not so much.
And did you suffer from any stereotypes as a French person?
Not really. I mean, or at least the stereotypes on French persons viewed by the US are pretty good. They think we are sophisticated, the Sardax and charming, so it's not suffering so much. They're really nice actually.
So you're saying as a French person you would enjoy being in the US?
Yes, it's so easy. As soon as they hear you speak, they're like, oh, how nice! That's very cool. It's better than being in Europe. Here they don't have a good view.
What was the most different, the most impactful changes from your daily life overall?
The most impactful food. Their food is weird. I don't say bad, I don't say good. It's just so different. It's really in the cliche, when you have your little plate and everything separate and not really veggies. It's really just everything is processed and transformed. So. Did
you experience any language barrier issues?
Not really, because their English is actually the English that we know the most because of TV show and movies. So of course some language and some southern expression would be different, but it's not really barriers.
Would they have any trouble to understand you or anyone?
Sometimes, yeah. Sometimes they look at you with this really like dead face, you know, when they don't understand you, but they don't want to say it, so they try to understand, and you have to repeat yourself like twice. But that's all.
What was your biggest problem?
I think it's like get around, because they're public transport, and it depends on the states. But in Texas, it's really bad. Like if you don't have a car in Texas, it's just like you're stuck basically, because they have this bus company, Greyhound, that I used once. The bus had like 2 hours delay, and then you had like 2 hours more. I mean, it was like it's really bad. And like the cities are not like Europe. You cannot just like walk around and see things, because everything is in city center. It's really spread, so you really need a car to get to one point to another. So
what was your biggest surprise in the US?
Well, I would say not in the US, but maybe in Texas. I was really expecting to find a lot of really like 1,000 stereotypes people, and I was just a bit afraid of that, especially since Waco is in the middle of nowhere. But actually I met a lot of different people, and so it was more mixed and intercultural than I expected, so I was happy about that.
Is there anything that you wish you knew before going there?
I wish I'd known that it was really easy and cheap to rent a car, because as I said, it was like the biggest problem, and if we knew, we would have done it sooner, even if we did it pretty soon. But still, it's really convenient, it's really cheap, and it's just great to have a car.
Any recommendation for future international students?
I would say to do what I didn't do, like look at yourself before you apply for the visa administrative requirement. Take care of that as soon as possible, so it's behind you and you'll like be more free to deal with the rest. And then just like keep an open mind, because American, even if sometimes they seem a bit like I said, they really easy to chat with, but sometimes hard to keep in touch. Don't hesitate to like try still to make real connection, because I don't know.
Thank you for sharing your experience. Anything you'd like to add before we end this video?
No, I don't think so. Thank you.
Thank you so much.